Hello, and welcome to the strange world of New Zealand haunted locations. Today we are nearing the end of our journey through New Zealand, with this being the third entry of the series. On a side note, I had previously mentioned the possibility of an alien or UFO video coming out, and after some quick research, I can confirm that it will happen, but it will also end this mini-series. For this week's video, we are going to look at a handful of locations known to have some of the most interesting hauntings. When starting the research for this video, I compiled an impressive list of haunted areas that was quite extensive, even though I was being semi-selective. As it stands, I have about 13 locations, which I'm going to attempt to knock down to 4 or 5 for the sake of time. I only mention this so that you know ahead of time that if I don't mention a particular area, it is probably only due to the necessity of making the video shorter. So without further ado, let's look at a few of these locations in no particular order. WhytoMo Caves Hotel. The first location on our spirit journey is the WhytoMo Caves Hotel, which is found in the town of WhytoMo, on the northern island of New Zealand. The hotel gets its name from its close proximity to the aptly named WhytoMo Caves, which has served as quite a tourist location. The vast underground cave system is home to a form of glowworm that makes for a breathtaking and beautiful sight. However, with its beauty comes a darker legend that isn't frequently talked about. This area is said to be seen as a sacred location, and in such, the Maori at the time buried their dead there. Not only this, but if legends are to be believed, many say that beings known as Tanawa reside in the deep pools of water as guardians, just waiting to attack any unsuspecting visitor. I know that seems outside of our topic, but I felt it important to allow you to see that this area is also known for being highly active. In 1905, the Department of Tourism and Publicity took over the land where the hotel stands today, but at the time it was already home to a private hostel. Construction began on a new building, and it was completed 4 years later in 1909 under the name of WhytoMo House. With an influx of tourists wanting to explore the nearby caves, it also brought a lot of business to the hotel. Due to this, the site was renovated again and finally completed in 1928. Along with the original hostel still being located on the site, you can also find a good number of spirits as well. The first is the spirit of a young Maori princess that was accidentally shot while trying to rendezvous with her British lover one night. This spirit is said to make her home in the honeymoon suite, room 12, and sometimes has been reported in the attic. Many people have encountered her spirit walking about or heard her loud moans coming from the attic. What she is most famous for is moving objects and lights in the bathroom of room 12 and pulling guests' bed sheets off during the night. In a unique twist, another ghost that is said to haunt room 14 is that of a man who in life claimed to have seen the Maori princess's ghost and felt her spirit pass through him. After telling guests of his story, he went back to his room and hung himself. To this day, the doors to this room have been seen opening by themselves. Some have seen a spirit in the room appearing to be hanging there, and in the most strangest of occurrence is a report of seeing blood dripping from the bathtub. In room 12A, which is a superstitious way of saying 13, there have been sightings of objects moving by themselves, and in a page taken straight from horror movies, many claim to see footprints appear in freshly spread talcum powder on the floor. In room 25, the ghost of a former employee is said to haunt that area, and has also moved objects around, but does seem to take joy in causing people to feel uncomfortable, and has been known to let out disembodied screams. Finally, the ghost of a young boy named Daniel, who was scalded to death with boiling water in a kitchen accident, is said to still roam about the hotel. Most reports of him claim to hear a child skipping or giggling, but children seem capable of seeing him and frequently complain of seeing a strange boy following them about. But hey, this hotel is almost a 4-star site, and it does have free Wi-Fi. The Vulcan Hotel. Our next area is located in the town of St. Bathans, originally called Dunstan's Creek, which is found on the southern island. Originally, the town was the location for prospectors of gold and coal to rest and find entertainment, especially when considering the town is relatively small and was home to at least 13 different pubs. After a while, the location became fairly desolate, and to this day many of its buildings have been preserved as historic landmarks. The Vulcan Hotel was originally built in 1882 of mud brick, which was later renovated and to this day still operates as a hotel/bar/restaurant. Oh, and let's not forget it is considered the #1 most famous haunted location in New Zealand. This classification confuses me, as it only has one spirit, but I'll get to that in a bit. Reportedly, the spirit that haunts this location is that of a prostitute from the 1880s by the name of Rose. According to legend, one night she rented the front room of the hotel for her and her client, and the next day she was found robbed and dead from strangulation. From this period in time, she has been very active, mostly with male visitors. Her apparition has been seen, objects have been moved, disembodied footsteps have been heard, and groaning sounds have emanated down the hallways. Not only this, but she has been known to lock and unlock doors, turn kettles on, and in some instances, her spirit can still be seen reclining in a chaise lounge located in the dining room. For some truly terrifying experiences, it is said that she mainly haunts room #1 and frequently appears at night at the foot of the bed, and if it is a male guest, she will hold them down and try to strangle them. Now jumping back to my confusion about being classified as the #1 most famous haunted site. The only thing I can assume makes a difference is that this ghost will physically attack, and possibly how frequently it is seen. The St. James Theatre. The next stop in our locations that are haunted is found in New Zealand's capital city of Wellington. This theatre has had quite a long history, with it first being a church and then being bought by an entertainer by the name of John Fuller in 1899. In 1903, he renovated the church into a theater under the name of His Majesty's Theater. In 1911, it was condemned and destroyed due to being classified as a fire hazard. John, being resolute, rebuilt the theater out of steel and concrete in 1912. After closing again on May 3, 1930, it was reopened as the St. James Theater. During its history, it housed many events such as plays, minstrel acts, ballets, silent and talking movies. One part that is rarely mentioned is the fact that rumors state the building was constructed on top of an old cemetery or burial ground. However, those reports have never been proven, but it does make for an interesting backstory. What is known is that the building houses many spirits that keep the show going. One of its most famous residents is an apparition by the name of the Wailing Woman, who is frequently heard moaning through the building. Apparently, in life, she was a struggling actress who, after getting booed off stage one night, took the rejection so hard that she committed suicide on the property. Her spirit is seen all over the facility, but what she is most known for is causing maladies to occur on the lead actresses. Many a performer has fallen strangely ill before a performance, broken bones, had a throat infection, or just about anything that would keep them from performing. As a side note, I am sure many view this activity as malicious, but it just hit me that maybe she is doing this to prevent the actresses from risking getting booed from the crowd, as she did. Another famous spirit is that of a man named Stan Andrews, who is heard wheezing in the backroom corridors. Apparently in life, Stan was in charge of the ushers, and he still is on the clock, as it would seem. An unfounded story, but an interesting one to mention, is that an entire boys' choir is said to still be performing in the orchestral pit. Many workers have heard their singing, but as they draw near, the sound miraculously jumps to the other side of the theater. As legend would have it, the boys' choir performed their last song in the theater before being shipped overseas on tour during World War II. Only their ship never arrived ashore. Perhaps the most famous of inhabitants is that of a Russian performer by the name of Yuri, who fell to his death from the fly floor above the stage. Many report it is believed he was pushed by a fellow performer named Pasha, while others say Yuri fell in love with a dancer who didn't feel the same way, so he jumped to his death. Regardless of how it happened, his spirit is still seen walking about the theater and has been known to turn all the lights back on once every living soul has left. What's different here is that a projectionist claimed that Yuri is a helpful spirit and has saved his life on 2 occasions. One night when the lights were out, the worker was walking forward to find a light switch and suddenly felt some unknown force push him back. Once the lights came back on, it was noticed that had the worker kept walking forward, he would have fallen into the orchestral pit. On another occasion, while on stage holding his infant son, a large beam fell from the ceiling, and again the same force pushed him out of the way and almost seemed to carry his son 3 meters away from the danger. With all the spookiness behind the spirits, I do enjoy hearing tales of them being helpful rather than malicious. Kingseat Psychiatric Hospital. I want to take a moment before I move on to our last topic and mention that I really wanted to cover one of the most haunted locations in New Zealand, which is the Kingseat Psychiatric Hospital. However, I grew a little bit irritated with current events surrounding the site and don't want to promote it. The building was a former psychiatric hospital that was known for being overcrowded and understaffed. This led to a large number of its residents dying from mistreatment as well as abuse. Not only this, but it is also the site where reports state that staff frequently committed suicide due to not being able to handle what they saw occur behind closed doors, to an amount that was more than the patient's death. It was shut down in 1999, but there are rumors of it being haunted. Oddly enough, I found a few reports of a gray nurse that hangs around, as well as a woman's scream echoing the hallways at midnight. Also, there's the usual disembodied voices and strange sounds, including a phone ringing. Now you may be thinking, what could he possibly object to with all of that? The issue I have is that since its closing, I find very little about its history, but article after article of the new haunted attraction that has set up shop and has converted it into a haunted house. Not only this, but in my research I did online, I found someone had set up a paintball course within the property. All of this bothers me and I refuse to name either company due to my feelings on the topic. If there are spirits still roaming the halls, I feel making the site a horror location is disrespectful to the dead, not to mention a few of the hospital's patients are still alive, so it just seems wrong to me. The whole real story is just tragic, and the horrors those people had to endure is far more important than the haunted house. Granted, I understand it could be beneficial to the community with bringing tourism, but I don't know. I just can't wrap my head around it. As for the paintball thing, well, I won't even dignify that with a counterpoint. Spirits Bay. Uncharacteristic of many videos of ghost locations who only want to focus on the scary or negative, I want to do something a bit different. I want to end our list with something a bit more positive, but yet still interesting. On the north shore of the Apori Peninsula is a location known as Spirits Bay. This area is known for many breathtaking views and is held as a sacred location. What makes this spot unique is that it is believed that the spirits of the dead must travel along this path in order to make it into the afterlife. Within this, it is stated that at night, people have seen the spirits walking towards the water, only to vanish from sight in the same spot as the ones before them did. Out in the ocean, there is a landform known as the Three Kings, where it is said that spirits are allowed to turn around once to finally get a last glimpse of the island before moving on. People that have witnessed this passage claim the spirits stay focused on their path and will not interact with outside influences. Although it does have to be mentioned that apparently in Tom Bowling Bay there is a river by the name of Kapawaru, which means snatching souls. According to legend, these waters house demons who attempt to capture the souls for their own gains as they walk by. As I end this, I must reiterate that I didn't want to really exclude any locations, but at the same time, I didn't want to make this a two-part video. So for the sake of inclusiveness, and as a bit of a bonus, I do briefly want to mention that the Atira Tunnel, which is a railway opening, is said to be home to a ghost of a Scottish worker who died during construction. And being as he is always seen traveling along the road east to Littleton, it is believed he is trying to make his way back to his home via ship. On the North Island in the town of Martin is a Jubilee Pavilion overlooking a sporting arena. The dark, featureless shadow of a man is frequently seen sitting on the left-hand side of the stands. Many people have seen this being, but as soon as they near it, it vanishes. Popular theory is that it is of a homeless Maori man who used to enjoy watching the rugby games and also used to sleep in that very spot at night. One sad day, the workers found him dead, sitting in the same seat that the shadow person now occupies. Before ending this video, I did want to mention that a local radio station around where I live is having a cutest kid and pet contest. Well, I entered Chewy in it and would greatly appreciate your voting for him, but the contest is ending soon. I will post a direct link to the page he is located on. As always, if you haven't yet done so, please consider subscribing to my channel for more content like this, and I would also greatly appreciate it if you could share my content with someone you might know who has an interest in this genre. With that, be safe, and I'll see you in the next one. Later.